What do you think of when you think traditional Mexican dress? If you think sombreros and ponchos, you are partially wrong. The history that encompasses the differences of traditional Mexican dress is astonishing. Have you ever wondered about the history of traditional Mexican clothing or the differences between men and women? If I were to stereotype the traditional dress of an average American white woman, I would assume Uggs, a sweatshirt, and sweatpants. Maybe even skinny jeans on a good day. You may be sitting there thinking, that's not what I wear on an average day, and that's probably true. However, the point I am trying to make is that when you think of what traditional Mexican dress, sombreros and ponchos are only a small part of what it really is, similar to how Uggs, sweatpants, and sweatshirts are only a small percentage of stereotypical American white women. In my speech today, I will be informing you of the history of traditional Mexican dress and the different styles men and women have. I am going to start out this speech with a brief history on traditional Mexican clothing and what it truly is. Mexico was conquered by Spain in 1521 and gained independence centuries later. However, before this colonization, there were some major cultures living there. The appropriate term for these cultures would be civilizations. Some of these were the Toltec, the Olmec, the Zapotec, the Mayasecs, and eventually the Aztecs. After the Aztecs came the Europeans. All these groups, cultures, and civilizations had a large influence on traditional Mexican clothing. Mexicans have always loved loud colors and earthy shades. These shades include brown, red, orange, green, and yellow. Initially, pigments were obtained from plants grown nearby, but once the Europeans settled there, these pigments were replaced with artificial acrylic dyes. The festive occasions demanded more color in the clothing. More vibrant the color, the better dressed you were. These colors were responsible for adding life to the clothing. Before the European influence, Mexicans used agave, cotton, and bark to produce their clothing. After the European influence on clothing crept in, which included the use of sheep wool, the clothing style changed a little to accommodate to the wool. Silk was also introduced in the Mexican attires around that time. After the introduction of the wool and the silk, the rebozo and the quiche-clamatel were made. Men in Mexico wore pants, shirts, and boots as everyday clothing. Skirts were usually only a single color, which wasn't among the brightest ones. If the temperature grew colder, the men wore a cape on this attire. This cape was called the serape and reached the knees at a minimum. The only colorful part of menswear in Mexico was this serape. Skirts were more commonly than any other form of clothing. These skirts were often ankle or knee length and always had flare to them. With these skirts, women wore the traditional vintage blouses that were light in weight and material and usually had quarter or half-length sleeves. The most popular and well-known men pieces of clothing in Mexico to this day are serape, charro suit, sombrero, and Mexican cowboy boots. The serape is a vibrantly colored garment with a fringe. It is used as a shawl-like coat and also as a blanket. The charro suit is a specially embroidered suit which is worn on the Day of the Dead. A sombrero is a Mexican hat with a wide brim. The hat is made of straw or heavy felt. It protects the body from the sun. The part of the clothing that is the most recognizable in Mexico and around the world is the Mexican cowboy boot. The Mexican cowboy boots look much like the American ones. They were used by cowboys in Mexico from the 1800s and on. They are made of leather, often exotic animal skin, such as armadillo, bull, ostrich, and lizard. They can be high or flat-heeled with high or low boot tops. Mexican cowboy boots usually have narrow pointed toes. Huaraches are the most common cowboy boots. There are several types of traditional Mexican men's shoes: huaraches, Mexican pointy boots, and Mexican cowboy boots. They are sandals, rather simple to make. There is a variety of huaraches. Usually they are made out of leather and are always handmade. Mexican pointy boots are unusual and astonishing. They have a narrow and elongated toe which can reach up to 5 feet long, and they are also curved up to the knees of a man. Usually, Mexican pointy boots are very colorful and are often decorated with elements such as flashing LED lights, disco balls, and even mirrors. Although men's traditional Mexican dress has changed very little over the centuries, the same cannot be said about the women's. The most popular and well-known women's piece of clothing in Mexico are the hupol, the cuichmetal, and the rebozo, and also Mexican skirts. These Mexican skirts for women have various names in different regions, such as the endorado and the rafayo, for example. The hupol is a sleeveless tunic made from cotton or wool. It is worn with a skirt. The designs of this piece depends on a region, beliefs, marital status, and so on. The hupol is one of the most popular women's clothing in Mexico. The cuichmetal is a festive kind of poncho. It is worn for parties, holidays, and festivals. It is handmade from hand-woven cloths and often heavily embroidered. It is very colorful. Now that we have learned about the history and the gender differences in traditional Mexican clothing, we will conclude. In this speech, I have covered the history and the different types of styles worn by men and women. The history that encompasses the differences of traditional Mexican dress is astonishing. While there are many differences between men and women's traditional dress, both are extremely significant to their culture. Thank you.